So, you know that feeling? You walk into a room and suddenly everyone just kind of goes quiet? It's awkward, right? You haven't actually said a harsh word, you're not frowning, you haven't done anything intentionally abrasive, but bam, the energy shifts the absolute second you cross the threshold. We almost always immediately internalize this, don't we? We're like, wait, did I commit some huge social faux pas? But what if I told you it's rarely about you being intentionally unfriendly? What if it's literally just about these incredibly subtle signals that the human brain picks up on in a fraction of a second? Welcome to This Explainer. I am so pumped to guide you through this really fascinating psychological terrain today. We're going to break down 7 specific signs that your natural, everyday behavior might actually be unintentionally intimidating people. And honestly, the craziest part? You might be doing this without a single negative thought in your head. We're diving deep into the psychology of first impressions, body language, and communication styles to figure out exactly how you might just be entirely misunderstood by the people around you. Okay, let's jump right into the agenda. First, we'll look at the unintentional intimidator concept. Then we'll cover visual and physical signals, followed by speech and directness. After that, we'll tackle silence and competence. And finally, we'll talk about reframing your confidence. All right, kicking things off with part 1, the unintentional intimidator, and those subtle signals the brain picks up on instantly. You see, intimidation in social psychology doesn't always require a bully. Sometimes people intimidate others without ever meaning to. There's no rudeness, zero malice, no weird power play going on. It all just boils down to unconscious signaling. Our brains are basically hardwired, like from an evolutionary standpoint, to scan situations and read people instantly just to determine, hey, am I safe? So what we're going to unpack today is this really fascinating disconnect between your completely innocent intent and the highly guarded defensive perceptions of the folks you're interacting with. You aren't doing anything wrong, but their brains are flashing a giant caution sign. Let's figure out why. Moving right along to part 2, visual and physical signals. Basically, what people are feeling before you even open your mouth. This perfectly represents our first sign, the notorious resting, serious face. Have you ever been just deep in thought, totally neutral, maybe even feeling pretty happy, and someone asks, hey, are you mad? Your intent is literally just to be neutral and focused. But the perception? They think you're angry, judging them, or totally unapproachable. The thing is, when your face is at rest and lacks those soft, inviting cues, like a slight smile or raised eyebrows, the other person's brain automatically defaults to a threat response. They read a lack of expression as a negative expression, even when there's absolutely nothing negative going on in your head. Let's see how this builds with sign number 2, direct, unblinking eye contact. Think about this for a second. Strong, steady eye contact usually reads as confidence, right? But if it's held too long or just a bit too intensely, it can unconsciously feel like a challenge. Eye contact is honestly super tricky. We're all taught that good eye contact means you're confident and trustworthy, but there is totally a tipping point. If you lock eyes with someone and hold it just a fraction of a second too long, or if you don't blink or look away occasionally to kind of soften the vibe, it suddenly stops feeling like confidence to that other person. Instead, it feels like an evaluation. It's like you're staring right into their soul, measuring them up, making them instantly put their guard up. And that brings us to another visual cue, physical presence and posture. Now, this one is probably the most out of your control, but it's absolutely crucial to be aware of. Sometimes intimidation is purely spatial. If you're tall, have a broad build, or just naturally rock a very strong, upright, commanding posture, it unconsciously triggers this subtle, size-based caution in other people. It's just a primitive reflex in the human brain registering physical size and strength. This caution has zero to do with your actual personality. I mean, you could literally be the kindest person on the planet, but your physical footprint is dictating the room's initial reaction to you. All right, on to part 3, speech and directness. We're going to look at how conversational efficiency is so often misread. So moving from the visual stuff over to the verbal, let's look at speaking with certainty. There's a massive contrast here between your intent and the actual perception. Your intent, clarity and certainty. You just want to get the facts across efficiently. But the perception, you come off as commanding and rigid. When you talk in short, confident, definitive statements, and you skip all those little hedging words, things like I think, maybe, or perhaps, you sound incredibly authoritative. And while you just want to be clear and save everyone some time, to the listener, that lack of softening language makes your words hit like a ton of bricks. It sounds way less like a collaborative discussion and a whole lot more like you're issuing absolute orders. This flows perfectly into the next sign, minimal small talk. Again, look at the disconnect here. Your intent is to get straight to the point, Like, why waste time chatting about the weather when there's an interesting project to tackle, right? To you, skipping the fluff feels incredibly efficient and respectful of everyone's time. But the perception from everyone else? They think you're distant and intimidating. Here's the psychological truth of the matter. A lot of people rely heavily on casual chit-chat to build a baseline of social comfort and trust. So when you skip that warm-up phase and dive straight into the deep end, it really jolts them. It leaves them feeling cold and off balance simply because you bypass the social rituals they genuinely need to feel safe. Now for part 4, silence and competence. Let's see how occupying space without giving reassurance affects the people around you. This brings us to high competence with low reassurance. In reality, you're visibly skilled, you're knowledgeable, you know exactly what you're doing. You're the classic quiet professional. But the perception? People automatically assume you're silently judging them or measuring them up. And this happens because competence can actually be inherently intimidating if it's not padded with a bit of warmth. If you're incredibly good at what you do, but you aren't actively offering verbal reassurance or smiles or that collaborative warmth alongside your skills, well, people can start to feel a bit inferior in your presence. They just naturally assume your high standards are a silent critique of their own abilities. And that leads us to one of the most powerful behavioral signs of all: not filling the silence. If you are comfortable with pauses and silence in a conversation, you honestly possess a rare comfort with yourself. But to others, it is terrifying. Actually, let me show you exactly what this feels like. Okay, did you feel that? That slight pressure? That overwhelming urge for me to just start speaking again? While you might be perfectly calm sitting in silence, most people feel this immense, crushing pressure to fill that void. When you just sit there peacefully observing the quiet, their brains practically panic. They read your calm silence as coldness, or honestly as active disapproval of whatever they just said. Finally, part 5, reframing your confidence. Because guys, these traits are not character flaws. We really need to completely reframe how we view these signs. If you're recognizing yourself in the resting serious face or the direct eye contact or the lack of small talk, do not view these as character flaws. They absolutely aren't. In almost every single case, they're actually signs of genuine confidence, markers of deep, productive focus, and absolute proof of your own internal comfort with yourself. You don't need constant verbal validation because you are secure. However, knowledge is power, right? Simply understanding how your natural confidence is perceived by the rest of the world gives you an incredible advantage. These insights are tools now. You don't have to change your personality at all, but if you want to, you can use this awareness to deliberately build warmer first impressions, just by adding a quick smile, a slight nod, or a few easy words of reassurance. Which brings us to our final parting thought. Knowing what you know now about the psychology of unconscious signaling, about how your face, your gaze, your speech, and even your silence literally impact the human brain, how are you going to use this awareness to shape your next first impression? Will you soften your eye contact a bit? Maybe add a tiny bit of small talk to put someone at ease? Or will you just confidently own your space, knowing exactly how you're being perceived? The choice is entirely up to you. But hey, the mystery of why the room goes quiet, officially solved. Thanks so much for exploring this explainer with me today. I hope you found it as fascinating as I did.